What's your earliest memory of living in Houston?
I can remember going to the village hall hill with my mother and father, and the burn what we called the Kaiser. That was a German that started the war. And looked at the sighting of rockets from Houston House Tower across to the hill. It was beautiful. And then every house there had wee tea parties in the garden. Just all went each other's. I'd be 5 when it finished. I can remember small things about it. The house across the road from us, the gardens were all like real lanterns. We called her Granny Craig, and she had, I think, 4 sons at the war. And they all come back safely, except one. He was a dentist, and he lost an eye. So that was his career finished.
I'm going to school when I was 5, up in what is now the Carrick Centre. That would be 1941. There were 2 classes in one room. We would call it composite classes now.
Right.
It was primary 1 and primary 2 together, and then primary 3 and primary 4 together, primary 5 and primary 6 together, and the qualifying class, which would be called primary 7, it was on its own. It was the old qualifying exams. If you got a certain amount of marks, you qualified to go to a senior secondary school, and those who didn't get the required number of marks, or if they wanted to, stayed in Houston, which was a junior secondary school. I do remember going to school the first morning, and we sat in wooden desks, of course, with the mids going up and down. Our teacher was Mrs. Laurie, and being wartime, we had paper, but there was a roughness to it. I remember it was almost like bits of wood still in it. It wasn't as refined as it is. Whether that had anything to do with it being wartime when there was a shortage of practically everything, I don't know. And we had milk. We got a small bottle, glass bottle of milk with a cardboard top, and they came in crates every morning. You got a straw. The cardboard top had a centre bit which pushed down and you put your straw in. The cardboard tops were really good for making pom-poms.
I can remember the church, which was what is now the church hall. It was originally the Free Kirk and became Houston West in 1929, and it was amalgamated with the parish church in 1949. And I remember an armistice day parade there, I think about 1948, which I think, as far as the village is concerned, is about my earliest memory of it. The other thing I remember is what is now part of ROF was originally the Royal Engineers, which was just down the road from us, at where, you know, the access, the Georgetown access place. That was a stretch of ground there taken over in the First War. But the Royal Engineers were nearer here, which was one farm away from us, and I can remember the tanks being serviced in the sheds that looked onto the road. I can remember them going onto the trains to go to the Korean War.
I remember being able to walk from the kennels burn the whole length down to the dam at the church in the burn because it was so clean. We used to go there catching baggy minnows in jam jars.
Meeting a very good friend of mine who I'm still friends with, who was our best man, whose father owned a farm, and I spent most of my childhood over there. I went after school over to the farm, spent probably 6 of my 8-week summer holidays there, living in the place and working in the place and helping out.
I have fantastic memories of growing up in Houston. I can remember going up Botherwick Field with my family for picnics. I remember going up to the dam, swimming in the dam out to the island, and then you got all covered in leeches. There was hundreds of leeches and you had to pull the leeches off. We had picnics, and I remember my gran took me down to the drying green behind the bowling club, and we used to goggle for fish, and my mum always caught fish down at the drying green. I remember going right along the burn again. It was clear and beautiful. So I've got fantastic memories of growing up when I was younger. It was a lot quieter and not so many cars, green fields. It was just lovely.
What was Houston like as a community when you were growing up?
What shops there then that we've got now? We had 1, 2, 3 grocery shops, and we had 2 Johnny Rothing shops. I sold anything in it, and there was a home bakers. 1 room, tiny wee post office.
Oh, very agricultural. The village was 300 people. There was some more in Crossley. The 5 farm businesses nearest us, including ours, had 40 people working in them. Round about, the number of people in farms was maybe 3 or 4 in every farm. And people working in farms, it was a wee bit hierarchical, right enough, but there was a kind of spirit to get on with the job kind of thing. The farms at that time were nearly all tenanted, and you had the factor and the landlord, and who were the Spears family up to 1958, and where you've got landlords and landlords, but they were benign. Some other factors weren't, but the people in the big house were, which made for a more cohesive community, and very well respected too. Everybody knew their neighbours and they worked with their neighbours. Thrashing was a big thing, and there would be the staff in 2 or 3 farms would be involved for a day or two, maybe once a month, when the thrashing mill come in. And no, there was a good community spirit. It was totally different from what it is now.
It was quite a busy place. There was horse and carts. We would get a lift to school sometimes in a horse and cart, or a lift home. And if it was a wet day, you would get the lift and they'd put a sheet over, and we were under the sheet. Everybody along the road knew us. When we started walking and we've come to Corsley Hill Road End, the workers up there's families all came down, and there would be 2 or 3 we would gather there, and then we came down to Barrahan Cross and we walked en masse from there wasn't the traffic in the road then. No traffic, well, hardly any traffic. So all the farmers knew each other, and there would be a dance in the village hall, and there was a young farmers club as well at that time.
When I was young, there was a co-op round in North Street, opposite the Houston Inn. That was the village co-op. Down the road there was a paper shop. Down the road there was another grocery shop. The post office was actually up in South Street, opposite the bowling club. We didn't have a chemist, but the doctor's practice met in somebody's front room. A garage in the village as well, right opposite the paper shop. And his house was actually next door to the paper shop, and the doctor used to come out and use his front room as his consultation room, and that was it. You went to see a doctor, you tapped the door, all right, come in, and very small. I think overall, the population in Houston was about 1,500 people. And that was a village and a rural area. I mean, everybody knew everybody.
Well, it was very small. As I say, there was only the main street, North Street, and Milliken Street, which is now South Street. So you knew every single person in the village and in Crossley. And if you did something naughty, you get caught because everyone knew you.
Everybody took care of each other and cared about each other. So it was a lovely community. And if we got into bother, if we did anything bad, And we got in the house, somebody had already told my mother what I had done.
Are there any particular stories or tales about Houston that you remember from when you were younger?
You know, all the old characters that sat down at the cross. You didn't move. They sat in the cross morning, noon and night. And then if you did anything wrong, you got out. They thought they owned the place. I don't know where they came from. I lived in my house down at the cross. It was Charlie Maguire at the Clock Village selling pot scrapers, and there was none of these electric things. Made from heather. He made them, and busy was for sweeping out the backyard.
Well, I learned to milk cows by hand when I was 4 in 1948, which I remember has been a big achievement. It wouldn't be now. In the 1950s, work was very manual. Brothers and I learned to work horses while we were at school and stock.
I remember going to Busy's shop in the village, where the market cross is, and you'd go there if you had any pennies to spend, which wasn't very often. You would get just maybe a few sweets. Everything was rationed, and you didn't really get very much. I don't think you could get a bar of chocolate. If you did, it would just be tiny.
Yeah.
It was Mr. Billsland that had that shop. There was no school meals in Houston School when I first was there. We took a sandwich and we went up to St. Fillan's School, where you got a plate of soup and a cup of cocoa. No, we paid something, but I think it would be something like $1. We got to know some of the children there, and we made friends for years.
Playing hide and seek up the old few. You know where the Market Cross is? Well, that used to be our den. We used to go down there for a summer's evening and we head up the old few. There's now a bungalow in that space. And Mr. McCune, who was the village policeman, used to come round the corner and we all scattered. We weren't getting up to mischief, we were just playing, but we were afraid of the policeman and we all ran home.
They used to have the bonfire. They only had 2 parks in Houston, and it was the big park and the wee park. And the wee park was in South Street, and we had the bonfire there every year to go round everybody's doors and get all the wood for the bonfire. Penny to the guy, and we had baked potatoes and fireworks, and there was no health and safety. You would see the fireworks get up and you'd be digging holes for your baked totties.
Sunday school and church were an absolute must every Sunday, and the school was of course 5 days a week, and working on the farm that was the three big things in our life. We didn't get to work about anything else.
What was it like during wartime in Houston?
I do remember the concern on my mother's face and her friend's face when war was declared. I had the feeling this was something really bad.
We just were on as usual. But there was air raid wardens and things like that.
Yeah. Where did you have to go when there was an air raid?
Up to the old police station. First aid went to St. Fillan's Church Hall across the road.
Were you able to keep going to the church, Marion?
Oh yes, there was an air raid, you just hurried back home.
And in those days it was still wartime, and there was an air raid shelter built in the playground. I can remember when the siren went off, you had to go into this. I can remember getting pushed into this. Wow. And there was a puddle of water on the floor, but you had to go through it, you had to go on, because there were a whole lot of folk coming behind you. And I get my feet soaking, myself, all my shoes, and this was in the morning. We just had arrived at school when this all took place, and my feet were soaking all day. And then I was off school with a cold, and then I took scarlet fever, and I was in the hospital in Johnston. I was about 6. It was dark in this, it just seemed to be all corridors, this building that you get pushed into when the air raids came. It was on ground. Once the war finished, it was taken away, and that made the playground a bit bigger.
You just went from day to day. Wait, you got a telegram saying they were wounded, they were dead, or whatever. It was very pleasant.
But I can still remember the Home Guard, which was farmers that would joined this Home Guard, and this was when the bombs came over, if there was a fire, if it started a fire, if they dropped near a shed or something, and the farmers, all the Home Guard used to gather at different points around when there was a raid on.
How's Houston changed over the years?
The village was only consisted of North Street, South Street and the main road. And South Street went up as far as the Bowling Green. The post office was up opposite that. And then after that there was no quadrant, no Fleming Road. It was a field. And the road which took you round to the kennels. Before that, Houston Field House and the gatehouse in, and then the road went round and up to the kennels. That was all that was there. So a good number of years after the war, I would say maybe 48, 49, first house was built in Fleming Road.
A lot of cars, much more traffic.
Dramatically. What's the population? It's about 6,500 now. Well, the village wouldn't it be 500 when I was at the school, and of course there was far more than that in the surrounding area. But that is the biggest difference. Building, we got married in 1969, and I remember the 1st of January 1970 we went for a run, and they just started in St Fillan's. Houses down in the quadrant there, I can remember them being started about 1948. The really big development started down there in 1970, and with 22 years of continuous building to 1992. Look, the face of the place changed completely. There was a gap from 1992 to about 2010 when they built the Callawans, just the other side of the End House to where they're building these ones just now, and of course it just changed completely, totally unrecognisable.
Well, it has grown somewhat, hasn't it?
They just keep building. I mean, we've got a town virtually now, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow.
And what was the best thing about growing up in Houston?
We just grew up ordinary, we didn't know any better. Went to concerts or whatever was going. They used to what they called kinderspiels. Both organists from both churches. They had the choir, but the Magic Ruby was one, you know. And there was nothing else then. Those kinderspiel concerts lasted 3 nights. Very popular. I just won't arrest the girls or boys. The good singers got the principal parts. I thought it was quite good we got a wee bit with 5 words. I thought it was quite clever.
The best thing for me was being on a farm, which I had no desire to stay anywhere else. I'd soon grow up there as anywhere else, I'll put it that way.
We had a double-decker bus that went from Houston to Johnston, and it sat up, you know the inn shop opposite Houston Inn? It sat in there. There was a bus stop just at the entrance to where the Fox and Hounds car park is now on the main road. There was a bus stop there, and then we had the station, of course, Houston Crossley Station, which also served Brookfield, and the bus met every train and took you in time to catch a train. I remember when I was at college, I would be sitting in a winter's night in the train thinking, oh, I hope the bus is there. And it always was. It sat and waited till the train came.
I think the country life, a brilliant bus service back then. It left from just what we called the Cross Keys, the pub. It's up started there and went to Johnson. And the bus service, there was 2 drivers, Willie Millen and Andy Hogan. If you got an early bus and you were working late, you would say to the early driver, tell so-and-so I'll be off the last train. The Houston Crossley station, that's where the train came in. And the bus was sitting up on the bridge, waiting, and if the train was 10 minutes early, fair enough. If it was half an hour late, the bus was still sitting there.
You were free, you weren't tied to anything. You were somehow free to kind of go where you want or where you wanted. And the friends you made, because everybody talked to us and we knew everybody.
Knowing everyone at school, the friendship, you knew everyone in your class. You used to just go out and play with them. You had freedom. We could go up to the Munt, as you now call it, the Witches. We used to go through the field in the morning and come back home for lunch, go back up in the afternoon and play up there nearly all summer long.
Community and friendship, open spaces, the freedom,